KTN.
Well, mainstream media and social media alike have heavily documented an influx of state-funded resources and cash, turning the mini polls into a high proxy war between President William Ruto's UDA party and former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's DCP. As this transpires and the July 16th mini poll draws closer, IEBC has sounded that warning over the instances of voter bribery, violent confrontations, and campaigns conducted beyond legally permitted hours. Allow me to briefly engage my guest on this pertinent matter as that date edges closer. I'm joined in studio by Luciana Thuo, who is joining us in her capacity as an electoral dispute resolution specialist and an advocate as well. Thank you so much for your time. Karibu to our studios.
Thank you for having me.
Equally joined by Jane Njeri, who's joining us via phone call. She's a national coordinator for the DCP party and has been actively involved in the All Kalou campaigns. And even as we speak, she's currently in All Kalou constituency. Jane, a very good evening to you. I hope you can get me loud and clear. Thank you so much for making time. Let's get straight to it. And briefly, the campaigns in All Kalou are nearing the penultimate stage, election set for next week, Thursday. Paint a picture for us of how the campaigns have been and whether voter bribery has truly been the order of the day.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Kindly proceed.
Perfect. So good evening to you all. I'm honored to be here. My name is Jane Njeri, and I'm the National Student Coordinator for the DCP party. So I've been in All Kalou for the past 4 weeks. We are here in support of our candidate, Sami Douglas Kamau, and I'm going to paint a picture of how All Kalou has been since I got here. So since we came here, I must admit that the people of All Kalou, each of them have an extra pair of shoes because they have received shoes from the government, and also there has been a lot of handouts that has been happening. Every morning you're waking up and you'll find All Kalou voters waiting on roads. They are being ferried from one place to Acacia, which is in Nakuru. So they are gotten from their villages, they are transported to Acacia, and that's where they are being given money. And also, you cannot even get to lose money right now because everybody in All Kalou has 1,000 shilling notes. So the situation is very bad right here, but the people of All Kalou, I believe they have decided and they know who to support in the coming by-election. Also, on the other developments, we have gotten boats, we have also gotten a train, we also eat online, so it's here. And also, there is a lot of promises. We also saw transformers being gotten from Bere North, and they are here right now. And all I can urge the people of All Kalou is to ask the same question that I saw you asking in the studio. Why now and why All Kalou? Because it's like there is a painting that we should have a demise of a member of parliament so that these things can be done. Because you cannot tell me that this is the right time that the people of All Kalou are getting to enjoy social funds like getting shoes, blankets, and also we have been getting mattresses as well. The people of All Kalou can attest to that. And the big question remains, in the hospitals, we have patients who sleep on the ground or the floor while these people are being given GOK mattresses. So I believe, to my end, that is inverted prioritization. And yes, I must admit that voter bribery has been going on. And while I commend the commission for claiming that it might postpone the by-election in All Kalou if voter bribery continues, I urge them to investigate and disqualify the candidates because it's already too late. The people of All Kalou are decided and they are waiting for the 16th to stamp their decision. So it's not logical to say that they are going to call off a by-election instead of dealing with the candidates that are involved with the voter bribery.
Well, that's good to note, and it's proper to say that development is not a wrong thing, but development with being used as a dangling carrot in order to sway the voters, that's why we're questioning the timing, especially since Mbere North right now are complaining that the transformers that were put 8 months ago during the by-election have been transferred. Jane, in a minute or so, tell me this, because we've seen allegations that handing out cash for exchange of identity cards, has this been documented and forwarded to the relevant authorities? Because we heard from the accused And he said that the identity cards, were being recorded solely for accountability purposes after receiving money to distribute to residents in specific polling areas. Briefly.
Yes, that has been documented, and we have also engaged the relevant authorities. So it's there. The people of Kalou are being asked to give out their personal details for them to get money, and which is a bad thing because you do not know what this data will be used. It's also said that the people of Kalou will be ferried to State House on Wednesday when the by-election is on Thursday, and it's raising a lot of questions because you're asking yourself, for you to get into State House, then you have to give out your ID and everything. So it also takes me back to the question that you had asked earlier. Why is the president interested in meeting the people of Kalou one day before if the allegations or what the people of Kalou are saying is true, because they have been told that when they go to Acacia.
All right, Jane Jerry, all the best as you continue with the campaigns. It's reaching the home stretch, but we definitely hope IEBC can get a semblance of order ahead of the mini polls that are slated for next week, Thursday. As mentioned, we're joined by Luciana Thuo, who's an electoral dispute resolution specialist and advocate. Straight to it, Thuo. Critics accusing the government of disguising bribery by distributing gas cylinders, mattresses, cash handouts, you name it, the list goes on. Where does the electoral law draw the line between legitimate state development and outright voter bribery during an active campaign?
All right. Thank you, Jesse. I think two things mitigate against the argument that what the government is doing is development. One, as the earlier speaker has pointed out, timing. The timing of this development project is suspect. Why could it not have been done last year? Why could it not be done next year? The fact that it's being done when an election period has been declared shows that it's actually intended to induce voters to vote a certain way. Secondly, the law gives principles that govern public finance, and development is done using public finance, right? So if public finance is going to be done, there must be openness, there must be transparency, there must be public participation. There must also be reporting and accountability, meaning there must be a budgetary allocation and an audit. The truth of the matter is the funds which are being used currently, whether it's 10 billion if Moses Kuria is to be believed or whatever other amount, are likely coming from diverted state or county budgets, or they're being diverted from a state agency, or they're coming from illicit sources. None of those are basis for doing development.
Okay, because we have up to 5 PSs on the ground. Some say it's a coincidence, so don't mind us being here. But at the end of the day, IEBC has the power to disqualify a candidate who's involved in electoral malpractice. But how difficult is it for IEBC or the aggrieved parties to legally prove that material distributions, food, boats, you name it, are directly tied to voter inducement in a court of law? Because it's so rare to see a candidate disqualified from vying.
Okay. First, even before we get to a court of law, let's talk about the power that the IEBC has now, which is a power that is donated by the Electoral Code of Conduct. The IEBC, within the powers that the Electoral Code of Conduct gives it, has the power to actually censure both the party and the candidate. And in the context of the by-elections, when the president is at, or speaking about Kalou or present, he's acting as a member of a political party, and therefore he is subject to the Code of Conduct. Right? The candidates and the supporters of the party are also subject to the Code of Conduct. And under the Code of Conduct, the IEBC has the power to issue warnings. If warnings are not complied with, then to disqualify a candidate or a political party. I know the IEBC chair has spoken about postponing an election, but there are already other avenues that can be used which would probably have a greater deterrent effect than postponing an election, because postponing an election, in my view, is just postponing the violations. It doesn't solve the violations. So there are mechanism that the IBC can use. If there is still non-compliance, the Code of Conduct allows the IBC to go to court and tell the High Court completely disqualify these people, not just for this, but for future elections. All those are tools that the IBC can use.
Has that ever happened?
It has never happened. And as you rightly pointed out, even if we were to raise these issues after elections, we saw that in Bere, the burden of proof is such that you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that those things occurred. And that becomes very difficult.
Just hold it right there. We'll be back with you. We need to pay the bills, taking a short commercial break. As we come back, we'll interact on the test of credibility for the electoral body. 1 year to the general election and 1 week to the All Kalou polls. It puts the electoral body in a tight spot in terms of proving its credibility. Let's take that short break. We'll be back in a few. To keep it KTN Prime. Welcome back to KTN Prime. Thanks for staying with us. I'm still joined in studio by Luciana Thuo, who's an electoral dispute resolution specialist and an advocate. We're just reviewing the state of affairs in All Kalou, bearing in mind IEBC has just raised a yellow card, telling the parties involved that, you know what, these cases of voter bribery, cases of campaigning past the stipulated hours should not continue. But bear in mind, I think we have barely 3 days to the end of the campaign period. So let's continue with the conversation. Earlier, we talked about issues to do with voter bribery versus development aid. Let's talk about credibility, because IEBC has a big test. It's a new commission, and its first major test will be the 2027 general election and how they manage it. But people say by-elections are simply a litmus test. So they'll be using this to perhaps gauge the deliverables under the IEBC. Let's talk about this widespread reports of malpractices that are already out in the open. At what point do these infractions fundamentally compromise the integrity of the poll to the level of demanding a postponement or cancellation?
Okay. I think, first of all, we must connect what is happening now to what happened last year. We had by-elections last year, and we saw the disquiet that was there with Mbere, with Kasipur, with Malava. And so when you say that the IBC is really struggling in terms of credibility, it is because we didn't see a strong response in terms of the violations. Secondly, I think we must also think about the powers of the IBC vis-a-vis the responsibilities of the entire ecosystem. I know we place a lot of burden on the IBC to correct violations, to do what is right. But the reality is political parties have a role to play in calling to order their own people, right? If political parties don't do what they ought to do, if the voters and candidates don't do what they ought to do, is when the IBC comes in. Now, in terms of sorting out the ecosystem of violations, please repeat your question again.
In terms of the infractions and whether they fundamentally compromise the integrity of the poll. Yeah.
I think we must always remember elections are a process. And if elections are a process, any part of the process that is not in consonance with the Constitution impugns the entire election. So if the nomination process, if the campaign process does not align with what Articles 81 and 86 of the Constitution say, the entire election can be nullified. So what we are seeing as violations now can be the basis for nullifying an election if, after the election the result is declared, people are not satisfied with the result. Yeah.
Okay, and finally, in 30 seconds or so, general election coming up, we have a huge trust deficit when it comes to trusting the electoral process, and that has been credited to why our elections are so expensive, you know? So safety features on the ballot paper. Talk to us about the steps IEBC needs to take briefly in order to regain, for Kenyans to regain trust in the electoral body here.
Okay. I think the first thing that the IEBC has to acknowledge is that Kenyans just don't trust it. I've spoken to what already transpired with the elections that the new IEBC has managed. I think the IEBC must not bury its head in the sand. It must come openly and say, we acknowledge that you don't trust us, and these are the reasons why. Number two, I think the IEBC needs to take steps that resonate with the public in terms of showing that it has teeth to bite. I've already spoken about the powers to disqualify a candidate. I think the IEBC is taking the coward's way out by postponing the election. What we want to see is the IEBC clamping down on a political party or a candidate or supporters. If we see the IEBC taking decisive action, then we might believe that the IEBC is actually intending on having a credible election. Until then, unfortunately, the IEBC can talk, but it just becomes, as the Supreme Court told us, hot air.
All back and no bite. All right. Thank you so much, Luciana Thuo. That's all the time we had. She was joining us in her capacity as an electoral dispute resolution specialist and an advocate. That's a matter we'll continue following up on. So thank you so much for your input.
Thank you for having me.
Asante sana. Let's continue informing you about other stories.